Our scripture lesson today comes from the book of the Exodus, the 12th chapter. I'll be reading verses 1 through 13 and then skipping down and reading verses 29 through 41. We're continuing our series on the exploration of the Exodus of the descendants of Israel as they left Egypt and headed for the Promised Land. So I will read Exodus 12, 1 through 13, and 29 through 41. I invite you all to listen for the Word of God. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall mark for you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year for you. Tell the whole congregation of Israel that on the 10th of this month they are to take a lamb for each family, a lamb for each household. And if a household is too small for a whole lamb, it shall join its closest neighbor in obtaining one. The lamb shall be divided in proportion to the number of people who will eat it. Your lamb will be without blemish, a year-old male. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it until the 14th day of this month. And then the whole assembled congregation of Israel shall slaughter it at twilight. They shall take some of the blood and put it on the two doorposts on the lintel of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the lamb that same night. They shall eat it roasted over the fire with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted over the fire, with its head, legs, and inner organs. You shall let none of it remain until the morning. Anything that remains until the morning you shall burn. This is how you shall eat it. Your loins girded, your sandals on your feet, your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it hurriedly. It is the Passover of the Lord. For I will pass through the land of Egypt that night, and I will strike down every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both human beings and animals. On all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgment. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the houses where you live. They shall destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt." And then verse 29. At midnight, the Lord struck down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the livestock. Pharaoh arose in the night, he and his officials and all the Egyptians. And there was a loud cry in Egypt, for there was not a house without someone dead. And then he summoned Moses and Aaron in the night and said, "Rise up, go away from my people. Both you and the Israelites, go. Worship the Lord as you said. Take your flocks and your herds as you said, and be gone. And bring a blessing on me too." The Egyptians urged the people to hasten their departure from the land, for they said, "We shall all be dead." And so the people took their dough before it was leavened, and their kneading bowls wrapped up in their cloaks on their shoulders. And the Israelites had done as Moses told them. They had asked the Egyptians for jewelry of silver and gold and for clothing, and the Lord had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have whatever they asked. And so they plundered the Egyptians. And the Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides children. A mixed crowd also went up with them, and livestock in great numbers, both flocks and herds. They baked unleavened cakes of the dough that they had brought out of Egypt. It was not leavened because they were driven out of Egypt and could not wait, nor had they prepared any provisions for themselves. The time that the Israelites had lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of 430 years, on that very day, all the companies of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. The word of God for the people of God.
Thanks be to God.
Let us pray. O holy God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be holy and acceptable to you. For you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. When I was in college, I read a lot of books by author Stephen King. I guess people do weird things in college, and that's what I did. And a lot of times, Stephen King, as his favorite subject seems to be writing about vampires. But not all of his material is like that. He wrote a short story that was called Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption. This was later made into a feature-length film by the name of the Shawshank Redemption. Many of you may have seen it. It's about a young banker, Andy Dufresne, who is convicted of the murder of his wife and the man that she was having an affair with. And he's sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in the state penitentiary of Shawshank in the state of Maine. And as Andy is going through his incarceration, he gets to be friends with some of the people that are there. One of his best friends is played by Morgan Freeman. His name is Redding, and so they call him Red. And he gets to be friends with him. He gets to be friends with the librarian that's at the prison. His name is Brooks. And Brooks has been in prison for a long, long, long time. And then after 50 years of being behind prison walls, locked up, Brooks is released on probation. He's released on probation, and he goes out and he tries to live out in the world as a free person. But everything he does seems to just go wrong. And ultimately, we learn, and the prisoners learn, that Brooks took his own life. And the prisoners are attempting to understand, how could a man, after having been locked up and freed, he was free, what happened? And if our wonderful technology works, I'd like us to join Morgan Freeman as in a little bit of a film clip right here.
The man's been in here 50 years, Haywood. 50 years. This is all he knows. In here, he's an important man. He's an educated man. Outside, he's nothing. Just a used-up con with arthritis in both hands. Probably couldn't get a library card if he tried. You know what I'm trying to say? You believe whatever you want, Floyd. But I'm telling you, these walls are funny. First you hate them, then you get used to them. Enough time passes, you get so you depend on them. That's institutionalized.
First you hate them, then you get used to them, and then you kind of depend on them. We take so much of our image of prison and being a prisoner from Hollywood, just like I just showed you, you know? We take so much of it from there. The publication Stars and Stripes wrote from a little bit of a different perspective. And they looked at the prisoners of war that were at the Hao Lao, my Vietnamese is pretty weak, prison camp. We know this as the Hanoi Hilton. And they looked at the prisoners that survived this brutal, horrible experience versus the ones that just gave up. And it wasn't consistent all the way through, but there was a huge finding that they had. The biggest difference they could find between those that were able to get through this and those that just said, I've had enough, was hope. It was hope. The ones that survived almost to a person believed that they would survive. They believed that there was going to be life after this horrible experience they were having, this seemingly God-forsaken hole that they were in. They would look around and say, there's more than this. And one day I will be free again. Their bodies were incarcerated, but their spirits were free. Their spirits had that hope of more. I don't know about y'all, but any time I have to think about being in a place like Shawshank Prison or in the Hanoi Hilton, wow, I want no part of that. Absolutely none. And I got great respect for Mike and Linda that are involved in the Kairos program, and I could probably do that. But there's something that y'all don't know about me. When we were in New Jersey, I spent my weekends in jail in New Jersey. Now, before you run for the door and say, "Dear Bishop, you sent us a prisoner as our pastor," I would go with the worship team. Once a month, our church hosted the worship service at the Monmouth County Jail in Freehold, New Jersey. And so our pastor and our lay leader and I would go, and I would take my guitar with me, and we would wait as the pastor would go up and talk to the guard that's behind the bulletproof glass bubble that's there. And you walk up, "Yes, how can I help you, please?" "We're in the church." "Okay, just a second." And then they would push this button somewhere, and this horribly colored, it was, chipped lime green, cheapest paint they could find, door with these big metal bars would start sliding out of the way. And they'll get to the end and go. Well, that was our cue to go into this kind of an airlock area that had had metal bars on the other side. And so we would walk in there, and we would wait, and the guard would push another button, and this door would start its journey back across. And it would get to the end, and I would swear it makes the loudest sound that has ever been heard by any human being anywhere. It goes, and you realize, I'm not getting out of here until someone decides they want to let me out. I'm stuck. I'm not going anywhere. And then they would open the other door, and the guards would come in, and they would search us, and they would look at my guitar and make sure I didn't have, files or whatever it was in there. They would check us all out, and we would go in, and we would lead our worship service. And we were every bit as locked up as every one of those prisoners that was in there. We weren't going anywhere until someone decided to push that button and let us out of there. But there was a huge, huge difference. We knew that in about an hour, they would push the button for us. In about an hour, we're going to be able to go through that door again, and we're going to walk out, and we're going to leave and go home to our families. We're going to be able to do that. The other people that were in there with us, no. In a little while, when we were through with our worship service, they were going to go back down to their cell, and the door was going to open, and they were going to walk in, and they were going to be locked up again. You see, we were free. We were all locked up, but we were free, and the prisoners were not. They were not free. And this is the story that we read in our scripture lesson today. We read about the descendants of Israel, and sure, they had been released from captivity in Pharaoh. They weren't free. They weren't free. They could go wherever they wanted to, but their spirit was still in bondage. Their spirit was still prisoners. They had seen some amazing things. Moses had answered the call. We talked about that. And Moses had gone to Pharaoh and said, "God says, let my people go." And Pharaoh says, "Yeah, fat chance. I've got some cheap labor here. I'm hanging on to this." And God brought 10 plagues on the nation of Israel. Okay? Here's some extra credit. What 10 plagues did God bring? What are they? Frogs? Locusts? Blood? Gnats? Oh. Chigger, God isn't even that cruel to the God would not bring a plague of chiggers on you. What was that? Fire ants? That's right there with the chigger. If it had been against the Republic of Texas, maybe, but it was hail. Livestock disease. Y'all are good? Did we say gnats already? I don't know if we did. So gnats, lice. I'm sorry, what was that? So yeah, okay. Lice or gnats. Boils. Well, y'all are good. darkness. And then the one that we talked about today, the death of the firstborn. The descendants of Israel saw all of these happen. Oh, hang on. They didn't happen over in Goshen where the Israelites were. They only happened where the Egyptians were. The Israelites were spared all of this stuff. They saw this. And then when they left, the Egyptians gave them everything they asked for. They plundered Egypt without even having a war. And they leave, and as they're going across the desert, there is this huge pillar of cloud that's going with them, saying, God is with you. They saw that. And at night, the pillar of cloud would turn into a pillar of fire. So they could see that God was with them all the time. They got to the Red Sea and parted, just slick as anything. Wall of water on either side of them. They walked through on dry land. Wow. And then when the army of Pharaoh decided to follow them, the army got out in the middle of the Red Sea and the sea swallowed them up. And they defeated the most powerful military force on the face of the planet. A bunch of slaves. They had all seen this. And we say, I tell you, Pastor, if I had seen stuff like that, man, I wouldn't be grumbling. I believe everything. But let's look at what they did and what they said. Exodus chapter 16. The whole congregation of Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, if only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt. Oh! When we sat by the flesh pots and ate our fill of bread, for you brought us out of the wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger. Oh, it's so bad. We had it so good in Egypt. It was so great there. And now we're out here and we're starving to death. Moses, what'd you do that for? You should have just left us in Egypt. You see, they were free, but they didn't live like free people. They looked at all the wonders that God had for them and said, yeah, whoop-de-doo. God, my belly's empty. And even though I saw all those amazing things you did, I don't think you're going to fill me up. Wow. They were still living in the bondage that they had lived in for 430 years. Every one of these people had been born a slave. Every one of them. And so the kids, out on the playground, hey, what are you going to do when you grow up? Oh, I was thinking about making bricks. And what are you going to do? Well, I was going to make bricks also. I was going to make bricks like my dad made bricks, and like my grandfather made bricks, and like my great-grandfather made bricks, and my great-great-grandfather, and it's all they had ever known. There was no hope. There was no hope that anything would ever be any better. Like everyone else in my family is slaves, and they're in construction, so I guess that's all I can do when I grow up. Is I'll be a slave and I'll make bricks. There was no hope. They were living in bondage as a prisoner in their soul. And then they left and nothing really changed. Sure, they were free to go where they wanted, but there was still no real hope. The only hope they had was what they could see and touch and feel here. That was the only hope that they had. And we think, oh, it'd be so much different with us. Yeah, right. Stay in your happy place, okay? I mean, seriously. If you haven't heard, we've been freed. 2,000 years ago, we were freed. We were freed from all these things that drag us down. We were freed from guilt and jealousy and laziness and lust and all the things that clutter up our lives and make us just miserable. You see, Jesus Christ came and lived and died and was resurrected and said, y'all don't have to live like that anymore. There's a better way. But what do? We go back to all those old ways, don't we? We go back to living the way we did before. We're in bondage when we don't have to be. We're just exactly like the Israelites. We're free, but we don't act like it. Oddly enough, after I already had the message all prepared, I got a message yesterday. And it fits so well, I want to share it with you. This message was from a person that had borrowed some books from me years and years ago and didn't return them. And they've been sitting on this person's shelf, looking back at the person every time the person would look up there. And they would say, oh, I can't believe that. I stole books from the pastor. The guilt is so bad, I need to send them back, but if I send them back, then it's like, it's horrible. What's he going to think? It's just eating me alive. This person sent a message and said, I can't live like this anymore. I've got your books. I'll be happy to send them back to you. But I can't handle the guilt anymore. I've got to ask, will you forgive me for this? I'll send them, I'll UPS, FedEx them overnight to you. I'll get them back, but forgive me. I didn't even remember this person had them. I would look for it. There's a couple of people looking for it. Well, if those of you helped me move, you saw all the boxes, so you know. But we got a few books in boxes, and what's that? It's in one of these boxes somewhere. Well, no, they weren't. Someone had borrowed it and didn't return it. I didn't even remember. Whoop-de-doo, it's books. And this person had lived with guilt for years. 4 years. I said, don't worry. It's forgiven. In fact, if you want to keep the books, you're welcome to do that. And the response was, well, Brad, I've been so busy being guilty, I didn't want to read them because the guilt was just overwhelming. So this person had these books all this, and didn't even read them. Isn't that our story? What is it that's dragging you down? What is it that you are willingly being a slave to? What is it that has just got a hold on you when all you really need to do is just confront it and say, I refuse to live in bondage anymore. I'm going to live in the freedom that was given me by God's very Son. And some ask for forgiveness from somebody. It might be that I need to forgive someone. It might just mean that I need to confront the reality of my situation, whatever that is, and acknowledge I don't have to live this way anymore. God paid much too high a price for me to remain as a prisoner. What's your prison? What is it that's dragging you down? Even though we're free like the Israelites, what is it that's dragging you down? It doesn't have to. We're free. We are free. We are not prisoners anymore. How about we live a life of freedom? Pray with me. Holy God, we thank you for freeing us from all of the horrible things that drag us down. Lord, guide us to accept your free gift. Guide us to ask for forgiveness where we need to. Help us to move past the guilt, the embarrassment, into the freedom that only you can provide. For Holy God, we ask this today in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.